Greetings everybody, this is B. Harper and this is Ollie. And we are here to review Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak. Now first, I must apologise for the lateness of this video. The lateness of this video and its brevity, because one, quite a few really big things are happening at the moment, and two, I don't have a lot of time to make these videos at the moment, so I'm just going to take this time that we have and do my best I can with it. So, that being said, I have been looking forward to Crimson Peak for quite some time, and not only because of Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro, even when he's not at his most finest as a director, is still a consummate storyteller. So when I found out that he was going to be making essentially not only a love letter to Gothic horror romance, but also a reimagining of it, if you will, I was on that boat and I was just ready to set sail with it. So what are my thoughts? This was a pretty damn good movie. I actually saw Crimson Peak with my friend Melissa, and she and I collectively agreed that this was a very good ghost story. But this isn't a film that relies solely on its supernatural values. I feel Crimson Peak's greatest strength, as well as its greatest weakness, depending on who you talk to, is the fact that this movie still would have worked if there wasn't ghosts in it. Now, let's look at the marketing of this movie. The marketing of Crimson Peak more or less painted it as a straight-up supernatural horror ghost movie. But when people sat down to watch it expecting this, they probably found themselves disappointed when they realised that this movie was more about the characters than it was about the undead. I know, like, fancy an audience being misled by marketing, who would have thought? But the fact of the matter is, and this is said in the first moments of this movie, a Gothic romance just happens to have ghosts in it. It isn't about the ghosts itself. And ghosts are more or less a kind of like the Greek chorus, if you were. The ghosts are somewhat of a means of helping to tell in the story, but they aren't the story itself. So that being said, what I really liked about Crimson Peak, apart from the obvious, was the fact that it manages to eschew Gothic romance convention. Now, as somebody who is a fan of the genre, I can still point out the flaws quite easily, and especially when it comes to female characters. Look, women in Gothic horror romance aren't exactly given the long end of the stick, so to speak. They are either like tossed to the side completely and forgotten about, or else they become victims of the monster of circumstance, or there's some sort of vicious temptress. Now, the women in this movie are played principally by Mia Wasikowska and Jessica Chastain. They are just so damn good. This movie is more about them than it is about, Tom Hiddleston's character. And look, most of the principal cast in this movie do so well with it. Mia Wasikowska is great as Edith Cushing. Edith is not some sort of demure damsel in distress. She is somebody who takes control of the situation. She is proactive, she wants to get answers, and she isn't content to let sleeping dogs lie until her curiosity has been satisfied. She's fiercely independent, but at the same time, she's still a fallible human being. And when she falls in love with Tom Hiddleston's Thomas Sharp, you believe it. Like, you have a sense of oneness about them, but at the same time, she isn't content to just follow him submissively everywhere. She is just a very interesting character. And also, Mia Wasikowska is one of my personal favourite younger actresses out there, and even though people tend to say that, she's dead-eyed and blah blah blah, I don't think so. I think she is a very underrated and very subdued actress. Just because she doesn't break out into histrionics doesn't mean that her character, or rather her talent, should be called into question here. Everybody has their own means of acting, and Wasikowska knows what works for her, and you know what? She works for the movie. Now, moving on to Jessica Chastain as Lady Lucille Sharp. Lucille is Thomas Sharp's sister, and she is so cold. She is so cold and so frosty, but at the same time, there's something going on with her. She is one of my favourite aspects of this movie, and I'm not going to give away any sort of crucial details, but those of you out there who know Gothic fiction or basically have a sense of where the story is going, you will know what direction Crimson Peak is taking. But still, with Jessica Chastain in this role could have been given to any sort of person and it probably would have been very one-dimensional. But Chastain does a lot with her character, and it's really quite interesting to see her work and see what's going on behind those icy blue eyes. So great. And Tom Hiddleston as Thomas Sharp. Look, you can understand why Edith would fall in love with Thomas, because Hiddleston is so damn charming in this movie. He doesn't look physically as imposing, but he still has a sense of mystery and a sense of danger about him. And I love what the film does with his character. His character in traditional Gothic horror fiction probably would have been seen as the lead sort of romantic hero, but very sort of Byronic and very cold and by turns or rather very hot and cold at the same time. You know, hot when it comes to romancing the girl of his dreams, and very cold when it comes to sort of facing danger head on. But with Thomas Sharp, it is so different. It's such a welcome change of traditional character design. It's really, really cool. Now, the only actor I didn't like as much was Charlie Hunnam. Now, I have nothing against him, really. Charlie Hunnam has done some pretty good work in the past, but for some reason, he tends to come across as very wooden when he comes to, you know, take on lead character roles. I don't know, in Sons of Anarchy, he is pretty good. But in Pacific Rim, another Del Toro movie, he's bland. You could feel any other sort of actor could have played him and it wouldn't have made a difference, but I digress. So, that being said, and going back to Crimson Peak itself, I still feel that Crimson Peak would have been pretty damn good without the ghosts. Now, the ghosts only serve two functions in this movie, or rather, their importance is only called in twice in the movie. One is in the form of Edith's dead mother. Now here's the thing about Edith, not only is she fiercely intelligent, she's also incredibly sensitive to the supernatural world. She doesn't toss up her skirts and scream when she sees a ghost. She understands that ghosts are basically people, or rather were people who have unfinished business on the earth. So Edith's mother actually comes to warn her about Crimson Peak and tells her, hey, nothing is as it seems, keep an eye out. And the second use of the ghost, and I'm not going to spoil anything here, is to reveal a huge secret. So, even though, this movie could have worked quite well without the ghosts, I can still understand as to why so many people felt betrayed when they saw this movie. But if you go into Crimson Peak wanting to see a very clever eschewment of a traditional sort of genre, this is the movie to see. When I saw it with Mel, my friend, we were both very taken aback by the fact that, one, ghost movies aren't exactly done too much justice. I mean, most ghost films tend to be very violent and very sort of, reliant on shock, but not so with Crimson Peak. This was still a very well-rounded movie with or without the spectres. So, that being said, I give Crimson Peak a 4 out of 5. And look, even though you can probably see the big twist coming and it may not necessarily be a huge surprise to you, and even though even though Charlie Hunnam's character is kind of superfluous to say the least, this was still a good supernatural romance movie. And for my money, if you can do a supernatural romance movie successfully, that's great. These types of genres are so difficult to nail down because people tend to fall back on the shock value, or they tend to pander more to the horror-loving crowd or the romance-loving crowd, and there's no sense of balance toward it. So with that being said, Crimson Peak is well worth your time as well as your money. It's got some great performances, some fantastic visuals. Oh my god, this movie, if nothing else, is visually gorgeous, especially when it comes to Lucille and Thomas Sharp's house. It's gothic, it is insectile, it is so weirdly eldritch that it's just so visually appealing. It's threatening, but it's just so beautiful at the same time. This is a beautifully shot movie, and every single frame is art. I also have to give commendation to the music in this movie. The music actually perfectly mimics, you know, not only bygone gothic romance films of the past, but it has another sort of slant on it. Like, it's very, very fitting to the story being told. And look, I'm really, really sorry for being incredibly vague about this movie, but one, I don't want to ruin it for you. This is the sort of movie that I feel deserves to be watched with, like, fresh eyes. And if you go in there jaded, like feeling like you're expecting something, that's where I feel some of the disappointment sets in. So no, Crimson Peak isn't necessarily a straight up horror movie, but at the same time it is a very competently made supernatural thriller, and I sincerely feel it is one of Del Toro's better Hollywood movies. So thank you very much for listening to me ramble, guys, and I promise next time I will be far, far more organised. So yeah, thank you for listening, and thank you for being patient, and yeah, you guys have a great one.